Hello, my name's Eric Hanscom. I'm a patent and trademark attorney with Hanscom, Alexeev McDaniel. Welcome to today's MCLE on drones and drone law. I'll be joined shortly by Ed Burns, who's going to be helping me out with the course. But I'd like to begin by just going over drones, what they are, and to give you some background on what we're going to be talking about with respect to the rules and regulations regarding use of them. So these are drones. Drone is a term for unmanned aerial vehicle or unmanned aerial system. We have drones that range in size from these tiny little ones that you can get on Amazon.com for $16 all the way up to larger drones that you can take commercial quality photographs with. And they're much larger drones than these. A lot of the movies are using huge octocopters that are probably 4 or 5 feet across and can slice your finger off with a propeller if you're not using them carefully. But right now we have some of the small hobbyist drones here to show you. If you're thinking about getting into drone flying, you have to understand a few things about drones. And basically what a drone is it's a combination of a camera, propellers, a battery, and a control system. It's basically a small flying computer. You can most of the drones have removable blades so you can carry it around with you. You just insert the drone propeller like that, twist it on, and you can twist it off for carrying. Drones are becoming so popular, there's even a market in drone backpacks. So you can even buy yourself a backpack that's custom made for your drone, and when you open it up, where's that zipper? It has various compartments for your drone and batteries and things like that. So anyway, drones are becoming quite a big business. And so there are a lot of rules and regulations coming about because of drones. When you look at a drone and you start flying drones, you'll realize pretty quickly that what you're dealing with is getting a camera up in the air and taking pretty pictures with it. Now, the features of drones that are probably most interesting from an intellectual property perspective would be the quality of the camera, the quality of the battery, and whether or not the drone returns home. Because basically, flying drones comes down to 3 things. How pretty of a picture you can take or pretty video you can take, how long you can keep the drone up in the air for, and when, not if, but when the software cuts out, because with all drones, sooner or later, the software connection between the controller and the drone is going to get disrupted. When that happens, will the drone return nicely to home, or will the drone try to take off and you'll have to spend a few hours trying to track it down? So those are really the 3 main components of a drone. How good of a camera can it get up in the air for how long? And when the signal is cut off, does it return home? So right here we've got a couple of drones made by the French company Parrot. This is the Bebop one. It comes with nice little safety features, so if you bang into something it won't break the propellers. It has a smaller battery and a lower quality camera than the Bebop 2, which, as you can probably figure, has a better camera. It has a much larger battery. This battery will actually keep you up in the air for about 25 minutes, as opposed to this one that'll keep you up for about 14 minutes. Now, with drones, some come with a micro SD card you plug in. Other drones have internal memory, so you plug basically a USB cable into the back of the drone, put this into your computer, and you can download the video from your flight. So again, this is about a $400 drone. This is about a $500 drone. You can also get drones with cameras. This is a little Hubsan, costs about $50. Obviously, the more you spend on a drone, the better quality photographs you're going to get. But when you want to start out, you can buy one of the cheaper drones, get at least a rough idea of how to fly one before you spend money on a real drone. Drones today are being used for a wide variety of purposes. One of the most common, of course, being for hobbyists and amateur and professional photographers to fly up in the air and take pictures of things from a new perspective. But drones are also being used for precision agriculture. You can have a drone, you can hook it up with a significantly fancier camera than this that'll record the water content of trees and things like that. And so basically for agriculture, drones are being used to fly up and down orchards and take data that you can later crunch on a computer and see which trees are getting enough water, which trees aren't, which trees are maybe being infected by insects. And the alternative, of course, is to pay people to either drive a cherry picker up and down between the rows of trees or to climb up ladders. A drone can fly up and down an acre orchard in less than 5 minutes, so obviously drones will save a considerable amount of time and money there. Drones are also being used for wildlife tracking. It's a great way to keep your eye on poachers. They're being used for mapping, for aerial inspections. Obviously they have considerable military uses. One of the uses here in San Diego County that they're looking at is to do the inspections of electric lines. And we have a lot of really hilly, mountainous backcountry where there are a lot of rattlesnakes and things like that. And the gas and electric companies would rather fly a drone to inspect these than have a person go out and risk his or her life stepping on a rattlesnake. So drones have a lot of purposes, and this is only going to increase in the future. Obviously, package delivery is going to be a big one. And so basically drones are being used for anything that is going to save money or save a person's life right now. Okay. Okay, you ready for another?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to actually shoot this. All right, so that's the drone taking off and landing. As you notice, the drone stays more or less in the position that you leave it unless you touch the control.
The first code is
688.
The first code is
688.
Well, I'm joined for the rest of this MCLE by Ed Burns. Ed is a business and litigation attorney in Oceanside. We've worked on a number of things together. Ed, could you give us a little idea about your background and what you've been doing for the last decade or so of your life?
Well, I've been representing all types of manufacturers and distributors of products in litigation and contracts and advice to keep them out of litigation, everything from products liability to distribution to helping them write adequate warnings for their products to comply with the local and state and federal laws.
All right, great. So the drone is a brand new field for all of us. I mean, drones have really only been popular for the last 3 years or so, and so we're all trying to have to figure out our roles as lawyers, how we might fit into this scenario here. And so one of the problems with doing an MCLE on drones is by the time they finish editing it and putting it out there, probably half the material we're going to give you is going to be an antique and has undoubtedly been overridden in one way or the other by some pending legislation or court cases or FAA rulings or something like that. So as of today, we're going to talk about what's going on with state and federal laws for starters. Now, until earlier last year, it wasn't even clear that FAA had jurisdiction over drones, but the Perker case seems to have established that FAA truly does have jurisdiction over drones. However, what we're seeing is a lot of the state and local laws popping up that may or may not have validity when compared with FAA. So, Ed, I know you've done some research on, both some of the national offices like Fish and Wildlife as well as some of the local city ordinances. Can you give us a rough idea of kind of what's going on now?
Well, yeah, since the Perker case, the FAA has decided that it is going to treat drones like any other unmanned aircraft system, which makes sense, and so just like
kind of what they are,
right? So anything that could fly into airspace, and they've long regulated airspace with respect to model airplanes, either wire guided or free flying. Kites, there's regulations about flying kites within federal airspace. So the next logical step is drones. And as far as what the state and local governments are going to be allowed to do, the general parameters are fairly well defined with respect to the state and federal powers. So the federal government preempts state law on matters that it issues regulation. The states do retain some power with respect to land use, zoning, privacy, safety, and law enforcement.
Okay.
So as long as the laws stay within those areas, they will be at least facially valid as not being preempted. Then you have the issue of the application of those laws. So, for example, a city might write a law that says drones are prohibited to protect the privacy rights of its citizens. So you can't have any cameras on any drones anywhere. Well, all right, it sounds on its face like it could be valid. It's certainly one of the categories
related to privacy.
It's one of the categories that the locals are allowed to regulate. But people don't have privacy rights when they're in the public at a park or on the beach. So at least from a hobbyist standpoint, that would probably not be a valid ordinance.
Yeah, I mean, if you fly a drone over a beach and there's a surfing contest down there and you use your drone to take pictures of the surfing contest and you fly your drone at 30 feet where you're basically getting the same perspective as somebody with a telephoto lens standing on the 30-foot cliff overlooking the surf contest.
Right, and then so the issue, then you get into issues distinguishing what is the person taking those pictures with the drone permitted to do with them, and we can talk about commercial versus hobbyist, and the regulations, regarding those. In other words, the hobbyist could take pictures for their own personal use of the surf contest and the beach. They would not be able to use them for commercial use.
Right. One of the really interesting things to me about the way that FAA is currently trying to delineate between a commercial use and a hobbyist is that if you fly drones commercially, you need something called a 333 exemption that may be going away soon. FAA, as I mentioned earlier, just came out with, it looks like the final version of Part 107 that may end up basically making a 333 unnecessary. However, right now, to be a hobbyist, you cannot accept money for taking pictures with your drone or anything like that. We're having, even here in San Diego County, we're having a couple of kind of tight situations where we've got people who don't have 333 exemptions who are out taking pictures of the coastline, and they're actually putting out books for sale of their drone photography. And the rationale being given is that at the time they took the picture, they didn't intend to commercially exploit it, but they changed their mind after seeing how beautiful their pictures were. And now they're selling their pictures in art galleries and putting out books of their pictures. So to the best of my knowledge, FAA has not written any nasty letters or anything like that, but the delineation between commercial use, hobbyist use, and the hobbyists who change their mind and suddenly become commercial but still don't want to pay for the 333 exemptions is kind of a tenuous one in my mind.
Yeah, I think the FAA is going to have some trouble with that. I think, certainly with respect to unmanned drones that are taking pictures, it's very similar to just a regular photographer.
Yeah.
And as long as the FAA, as long as the commercial photographer, the hobbyist taking pictures who later changes his mind, is not flying in a no-fly zone and not violating the other air rules that traditionally the FAA regulates, I think the FAA is going to have a very difficult time stopping that commerce.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about that, too, is even though these laws have been in effect for a long time, to the best of my knowledge, FAA has not taken any action against anyone for the commercial versus hobbyist issue. Instead, they will take action on the careless and reckless requirement. And quite frankly, I think that's valid. I mean, the YouTube is full of videos taken from drones that clearly shouldn't have been flown in the manner they're being flown. As a matter of fact, I have on one of my websites an award for Dridiot of the Month, which is a drone flying idiot of the month, and I give it to the person who uses a drone in the most stupid manner that I can find. So we've got one of the winners was the guy who had a few drinks and flew a drone into the White House tree. We've got pop singers who tried to catch drones in contests and cut their hands open. The winner for 1 month was the person who crashed the drone into a tennis match. We've had drones falling on ski slopes behind skiers. And probably the scariest video was somebody who took a drone in Chile and flew it the opposite direction in traffic and decided to try to slalom through the trucks and cars that were approaching it. So, if FAA is looking to regulate for careless and reckless, there are plenty of examples out there. And fortunately or unfortunately, most of those examples, the proof is the YouTube video that's out there.
Right. So the FAA, regulates airspace, obviously, and so I think what they're trying to do is establish rules so, they're after the bigger fish, right? The Amazon, these companies that are going to be flying unmanned aircraft, delivering packages, and truly participating in commerce as opposed to photographers. And I think to the extent that people are doing really dangerous things, the FAA is only going to be able to do so much.
Right.
The local governments you're going to see local ordinances about. You can't fly drones down the street under
overpasses.
Under overpasses and within 10 feet of a highway or 100 feet of a freeway. Those are the types of rules and regulations and municipal ordinances I think we're going to start seeing.
What kind of ordinances are we seeing right now, and what do you think about the constitutionality of some of these?
Well, there's several cities in California have made attempts to write ordinances. Poway just enacted one recently that the purpose of it was to not prevent interference with emergency services. They have fires there every few years, and the last thing that the firefighters or anybody wants is some hobbyist flying their drone up and getting in the way. And that's fair. That's going to be upheld. If you and your son are flying a drone in the park on a day like today, and there's no fires and there's no emergency services, and the police show up and issue you a ticket, I think there's going to be a problem. But again, that's with respect to how it's enforced.
Sure. No, that makes sense. I've been hearing through the drone channels that there are some cities that have just had outright bans. I believe that Poway initially said we're just going to ban drones, and then kind of scaled that back to we'll ban drones when they're endangering firefighting equipment, which out in Poway, it's a valid concern. There are a lot of steep hills there, and one drone going into a helicopter blade is going to cause trouble. So
right, and the city of Poway is going to hire commercially licensed drone pilots to fly over natural disasters such as a fire, so that the firefighters have more information. But you don't want
Joe Hobbyist,
20 Joe Hobbyists, having drones that are up there interfering with that commercial pilot's legitimate interest in preventing those fires. But an outright ban, even in the name of public safety, is not going to fly. That will not be upheld.
What about federal locations such as a fish and wildlife refuge or a national park? I know that the U.S. national parks have banned all drones under all conditions. And how likely is that to stick, do you think?
Well, that's going to get a little tougher, I think, because what you're going to find there, and the state of California, within the last couple of months, they have Assembly Bill 2148, and what they have mandated with it went through the House and Senate, and so by January 1st, 2018, the Department of Fish and Wildlife shall develop regulations governing the launching, landing, or ground-based operations of unmanned aircraft services. And there's a list of there's a group of categories that they want to protect through their regulations. So those regulations haven't been written yet, but at least on their face, they're valid.
Right. Okay.
So these are issues that are going to play out. You know, and it's the protection of wildlife. Not interference with migration, breeding, protection of historical and natural resources. Well, in a state and national park, they have a lot of species.
Many,
and they could be endangered, or you know, one bird is going to be migrating this time frame, you know, the months of March and April, and the next one's going to be migrating in November, and the hobbyists are going to have a tough time distinguishing and knowing these things. So I think there's going to be some clashes. Certainly, and I think at the end of the day, the parks are going to have areas designated for hobbyists. And I think, you know, as you're aware, the park rangers are going to be hiring people to fly drones into areas that are difficult to reach without disturbing the wildlife. So it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be difficult, because on the one hand, they will use drones. And then it will be a bit hypocritical to say, all right, we're banning the use of drones.
Nobody else can.
So I think there will be some time, place, location regulations for people until it becomes unmanageable. And if it becomes unmanageable, the government might get that.
Well, I think it's interesting, because this kind of goes back to some stuff I talked about earlier in this MCLE about the quality of the drones, and the fact that 3 years ago there was basically 2 manufacturers of drones, and if you bought one of those, you had a pretty good idea that if you flew the drone up in the air, it was going to come back to you when you were done flying it. Well, that's no longer the case. You can go to some of the big box stores and you can get a drone for $95, and you know, you get what you pay for. I mean, as I said earlier, you got to spend $400 or $500 on a drone to really get a good quality one. So if we've got the $99 specials, I certainly don't want to be rock climbing on Half Dome and have a $99 special drone trying to photograph me, because it may hit me in the head or it may cut my rope at the same time. So, you know, these types of regulations may have to be tied into the FAA's apparent direction with the 107, the Part 107, where you have to have your drone certified, and there may be some requirements as well as the quality of the drone and the quality of the drone pilot.
Right, and certainly, you know, those are issues that are going to remain to be seen. I think that what you'll see is limited areas within parks where drones are permitted. You know, and times of the year, times of the day, operating hours, operating conditions. In other words, you're not going to operate drones in Yosemite when it's snowing. You're not going to operate drones anywhere near El Capitan when there's rock climbers. You know, the public's going to face a lot of these issues, and it's going to be complicated to both write them and enforce them.
Well, let me bring up a situation that happened to me about 2 weeks ago, and this is going to be an interesting type of situation I think is going to recur. I was out flying my drone, and I made a YouTube video, and I put it up, and it turns out that I had been flying in or near a National Wildlife Refuge, and so I got the National Wildlife Refuge sent me a little YouTube link saying, hey, we've banned drones in our National Wildlife Refuge. So I wrote him back and I said, okay, well, you know, I want to comply with the law. just offhand, though, you also allow duck hunting and a lot of other hunting in your wildlife refuge. So the rationale you advanced to me that you were afraid I was going to harass the wildlife with was actually this exact drone. If I'm a duck, I think I'd rather have that drone flying around me and get my head shot off with a shotgun. So, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, right. So the issue is they enacted a ban to protect the harassment of wildlife.
Right.
Okay. Well, if you're not harassing wildlife or you're not flying in a manner to harass wildlife, and again, I think it's valid on the face.
Yeah.
But the application is too broad.
I agree. Yeah.
And it's the same thing. And I agree with you. I suppose nothing harasses wildlife like a
shotgun,
like a buckshot, right? Yeah. So, but hunting and fishing are that's not gonna stop.
No, not
but certainly, I don't. How are they going to prevent the photography of wildlife by a drone?
Yeah. To add another level of interest to it, I was actually using my drone to do some, and I never charge for using my drone to photograph environmental projects or anything like that, but I was actually doing some work for the state of California, photographing rivers and things like that, so they could get an idea from a drone's perspective of what the drainage looked like and what the riparian habitat looked like, because they're in the process of doing water sampling to try to make sure that these particular rivers are clean. So at this point, I think we're going to have one agency of the state up against Fish and Wildlife, and that's going to be an interesting one because the state wants me to keep flying. They're saying, please go back, get us more footage, we love it. Can you fly some other areas? And so that's going to be a fun one.
Well, that will be interesting. And then you have issues of, I can think of issues of sort of watchdog groups like the Sierra Club who have, court rulings with respect to the policies and procedures that parks are supposed to follow and mitigation.
Yeah.
And how can you prove compliance, and maybe it's impractical to traipse back to some of these rivers to see if they're clean or not, or to make sure that the mitigation efforts or the eradication of non-native species is really occurring. Well,
sure.
Someone's going to be permitted to fly a drone back there.
Particularly if you're concerned about the water quality, do you really want your scientists wading through the water to count the number of tamarisks, or would you rather fly a drone overhead, download the footage, and count the tamarisks looking at it from the safety of your office on a laptop?
Well, and it's interesting that that we say that because the California legislation doesn't apply to people with commercial licenses.
Yeah.
So long as that person is complying within the terms of the commercial license. So but again, as a hobbyist, if you're not harassing the wildlife, if you're not invading people's campsites, if you're not endangering anybody's life or interfering with safety personnel, it's going to be hard for these places to regulate.
Yeah. So this puts me in the somewhat unique position of perhaps having to tell the state of California that I have to get a commercial license to be outside of their regulations so I can use it for a clearly non-commercial, clearly charitable purpose.
Well, yeah, I don't, and I don't know that they can necessarily make you do that. You're not truly a commercial.
I'm not
a commercial pilot.
So that's going to be off my drone photography, and I never want to.
Well, I think you're going to have to let the state and and the park rangers sort it out.
Yeah, I know. So, what else do you see on the frontier for state versus federal law on this?
Well, there's just going to be more fights over, the delineation between what the FAA is truly, what's within their power,
right,
and how do the states and local ordinances protect their interests.
Sure.
I think, that's the developing area of the law. These places, the states, the feds, and the municipalities all carving out
their turf. Yeah.
And then it's the enforcement of it.
Sure.
And that's going to, like any regulation where there's federal preemption, you're going to have individual, a case by case basis. Yeah. So it will be interesting. One of the issues obviously everybody's concerned about is privacy. Nobody wants your neighbor flying a drone with a camera over your yard.
Just look at the South Park episode where Eric Cartman got his hands on a drone to see the worst case scenario there.
Yeah. Well, right. But life will imitate art.
Right. Yeah.
So that it will be coming to you soon. Sure. On a YouTube channel near you, live and in person. Yeah. But I think. So cities are reacting to that, banning cameras on drones.
Yeah.
Well, again, people don't have privacy rights out in your parking lot or in a public park, and so I think you can enact an ordinance that says you can't fly drones in a reckless manner or within 10 or 20 feet of another person in a public space, but banning cameras is probably not going to work.
Yeah. I don't think the press would be too keen on that either.
The press will not be keen on it, and it'll be interesting to see if the press they get involved in First Amendment issues quite often, and some of these can involve First Amendment issues and rights to take photographs in public places.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the size of the drone, if you're filming a public event, you want this flying over, you want a helicopter, because you can't fly a helicopter 100 feet over a group of people without them hearing it or really being aware of it. You can fly one of these, no problem, for better or for worse.
Well, and then the issue is, okay, well, what kind of liability is there for the person flying it, and for the company that makes it?
Yeah. What do you have to say about that? I mean, we've got a number of people who are trying to commercially exploit the drone world. You've got people who make them. You've got people who charge people money for flying them over and shooting movies, taking pictures of houses for realtors. You've got the drone repair business is a fairly big one, because drones, they don't always come down cleanly. They crash and they burn sometimes, and sometimes you have to, basically the drone, it's a flying mini computer with a camera on it, and so as with your personal computer or your Mac or whatever you're using, sometimes you have to take it into the computer repair shop. So with drones, sometimes you have to get them repaired. So what do these various groups have to worry about in terms of liability?
Well, it's no different than any emerging technology. 120 years ago was the horseless carriage, and today it is. You operate a machine, whether it's a drone or an automobile, you're liable for your own negligence, and the manufacturer is liable for its negligence. So I guess we can start with the hobbyist.
Right.
If you go to an event, a public event, and you're flying your drone and complying with the law in every other way, and you are bringing it down, and you negligently fly it into somebody, you're going to be liable for their injuries. And when you look at these drones, so this particular drone has 4 of these propellers, spinning at high rates of speed.
Correct.
This propeller is very light, and I imagine it has to spin very fast.
And they're pretty sharp on the edges, too.
Well, they're sharp enough to lop off a finger or cause a deep gash, or they can cause damage.
You can cut yourself with one of these things. Yeah.
Sure.
And the bigger ones, you clearly could lose a finger or a limb. When you start getting to the high-powered ones, especially the octocopters and things like that, those could be lethal weapons. With one like this, by and large, if things really get, and I've done this before on occasion, you reach up, grab it by the bottom, turn it off, or just pull the battery off. You can kill it that way. There's no way I'm going to try that with something, an octocopter with carbon fiber blades this long, because I'm going to lose my hands.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. And if you fly this into a crowd of people,
Someone's going to get hurt.
Someone's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And so, it's like any other product in user error. The user will be liable for their negligence in failing to operate it in a safe manner. Just as if you're driving down the street and you drive up onto a sidewalk and run people over, you're going to be responsible.
Sure.
Now, the state of California mandates you have automobile insurance.
Right.
They make you insure yourself against
Yes.
your negligence. Will recreational droning come to that? It might. That remains
I think
to
so.
be seen.
My guess is yes. I think we're going to have certification, and we're going to have, they already have the requirement, if you're a drone pilot, even if you're recreational, you need to register yourself. And so I've got my little registration tags. They don't look very pretty, but I've got them on both of the drones that I fly. And on the back is my name and my email address and my phone number, with the hope that if this thing ever flies away, that somebody will find it, call me, and give it back to me. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, when people are flying these things, they need to be concerned about, what if I make a mistake? Or it's a user error,
Sure.
even a simple one.
And one of the interesting things there is you're finding, and this is happening a lot in the warranty situation, where a drone will crash and the drone owner will say, it wasn't me. The software glitched, the thing just crashed. I wasn't even touching the controls or anything like that. And the factory then will often say, our drones don't crash. It was user error. You got two people pointing the finger at each other there.
So, right, and the injured party doesn't care.
They don't care. They'll sue both of them.
They'll sue both of them, and you're going to find, and you'll find automobile accident cases where the driver said, "I put the brakes on," and they went straight to the floor, and I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, General Motors and Ford and these companies have you can find numerous instances where they're on the hook for product liability.
Right.
And so drones, like any other product, are subject to the same product liability laws. And in California, manufacturers, distributors, retailers, anybody in the supply chain for monetary value or compensate, where they benefit monetarily somehow, is going to be responsible on the hook. Now, there could be indemnification agreements between the manufacturer and the retailers or the wholesalers, but that's not the injured person's problem. So they can be on the hook for a manufacturing defect, a design defect. So a manufacturing defect would be, this little motor has a specification, and there's I don't know if you can see it, but there's a bunch of little coils in there.
Yes.
And so maybe one of those coils was left out. And with this on, right, the average consumer is not going to look in there.
No, they're not going to.
And so that causes some problem, and it causes it to fail list and runs into somebody.
Sure.
So that's a manufacturing defect.
Right.
A design defect would be, hey, this thing flies up, but it's really almost impossible to land unless you're an expert. It's just it has a poor design. These aren't big enough.
And it runs out of battery, and it falls out of the sky unless you're a super expert drone flyer. So for your average person, you can get it up, but it comes down wherever it wants.
It comes down wherever it wants, and it's just it's a poor design.
Right.
And then you have a failure to give proper instructions. So these are, according to the box, 14 and up. But you provide an operating manual that you need a PhD in aeronautical engineering to understand. And the 14-year-old kid goes out there, and he read the instructions, and he's trying to follow them, and he flies it into a group of people. So failure to instruct and failure to warn as to the dangers.
Interestingly enough, on the instruction, now, by the way, this is a Parrot Bebop, and one of the reasons I fly these is they religiously return home whenever the signal gets cut off, which I really, really like. But not all drones return home very well. When I first started flying a few years ago, the instruction, now almost all the drones right now are made overseas. The instructions you would get with drones, not particularly with the Parrot company, but with another company, were so terrible. I learned to fly by watching YouTube videos. The instructions were just indecipherable. They were so bad, and they're written on these tiny, tiny little pieces of paper. I mean, you got no instruction. You got a $1,400 drone, and you had to go on YouTube to figure out how to use it.
And that could be a problem.
Yeah.
If the failure to give the proper instructions causes harm to somebody, and as the technology improves, so this Parrot drone returns itself to you.
Very well. It returns within a foot of where I launch it. Even if I drop dead of a heart attack and my controller falls over, this thing will come right back home.
All right. So as that technology improves, it will force the other drone companies to acquire that technology, because if it's out of use, it's that's why we don't have cars with 4 drum brakes anymore, or all cars have airbags now and crumple zones, because as the technology permits and becomes not cost prohibitive, it's expected that manufacturers will incorporate those technologies from a safety standpoint into their products. And the ones that don't have big problems and get sued and go out of business.
Right.
So the drone companies need to adapt. They need to pay attention to the latest technology, both in terms of manufacturing, design, with respect to safety and use. So if there's features that you can incorporate into your control that help with the stability or ability to fly, you're going to need to look very closely at those as a manufacturer.
Now, as a drone retailer, the drones are becoming so popular that there are drone shops popping up all over the place. As a U.S.-based drone retailer, what do you need to worry about when you're buying all your products from overseas?
Well, you need to worry. There's a lot of things you need to worry about. One, and we just talked about it, the technology. If you can avoid it, you don't want to sell products with outdated technology.
You don't want to be the one that sells a $99 drone.
You don't want to be this $99 drone seller, because that's just you're begging for trouble. I think you want to have solid agreements in place. You want to buy from a well-respected company that's been around and has adequate insurance. And coverage, some presence in the United States. You don't want to go onto a website and buy only from a company that sells direct out of China. You want the company to have a presence in the United States, so that if there's a problem, you don't have to go to China to enforce any warranties. And then I would look for companies with solid warranties that are enforceable. You should consult an attorney and say, look, I want to buy 100 drones a month from this company. Here's the agreement they're giving me. Does it protect me? And I would get copies of insurance policies, be named on the policy, because the problem is, if I buy this Parrot from a Chinese company and they go away and have never set foot on the U.S. and I can't bring them here, and this crashes into somebody, I'm on the hook. As part of the chain, the supply chain. And I need to be aware of those issues.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's take the drone repair situation. Obviously, these things crash. If you're a drone repairer, you're going to get a couple of different types of people coming to you. The first would be people who have a drone that's under warranty, the manufacturer's warranty, and they're going to be asking you to fix it under warranty. Then there could be people who either bought a drone that doesn't have a warranty, or they bought a used one where the warranty is voided, or they even tried to trick it out. Like a lot of people like to add lights and other things like that to their drones. The problem there is you basically have to strip the drone down, find the electrical connection, solder it in there, and then that's going to void any warranties. So you've got warranty repairs, you've got non-warranty repairs. If you're a drone repairer, what kind of things can you do to try to protect yourself?
Well, the number one thing you can do to protect yourself is insurance.
Okay.
And I think that's true if you're a retailer, distributor, wholesaler. You need adequate insurance. And repair people are the same. Again, and I'll use the automobile because it's the one everybody understands. And I think if you read the futurists, right,
Sure.
we're all going to be in unmanned
We're going to be in
vehicles.
these babies,
And some may go on the street, and a lot of them are going to fly.
Yeah.
So we're all going to be transported by these in the future, and I suspect it's coming faster than everybody thinks.
I think so too.
So if I take my car to the dealer where I bought it, and I tell them the brakes are squeaking, and they take a look at it, and they take apart my brakes, and then they go on brake, and the next guy comes and just puts my tire back on, and I drive down the road without brakes and I crash into somebody. The repair shop is going to be responsible.
Yes.
Because they were negligent. It's the same here. The warranty for the practical. The warranty is going to contract with a repair shop to provide services in a limited manner. In other words, there's going to be a limited warranty on it. So there's only going to be X number of things that are covered. You're going to have insurance. The agreement is probably going to require you as the repair shop to have insurance and indemnify and defend the manufacturer.
Right.
So there's certain things that you're going to need to negotiate with respect to those agreements, including what if you work on it, but you fix the blade comes off, you fix that, but the next time the blade comes off because of a manufacturing defect, not because of your repair, right? The whole thing just falls off. Well, the manufacturer is going to look at you and go, this is your insurance, but you need to have, no, my insurance doesn't pick up unless it's my fault. But if there's a manufacturing defect, a design defect, or something else that causes the problem, then manufacturer, you have to have insurance, and you have to cover me for those issues. And those are standard terms in agreements between manufacturers and repair. So, again, you need to consult a good attorney to review those documents to make sure that you are covered. As far as a repair shop where, hey, my kid flew his drone into a tree, and I bring it into the mall, and can you fix my drone? You need insurance. I think you also need to be aware. You need to ask the customer, is it under warranty? Do you have a copy of the warranty? Because there are going to be times when maybe what is covered, maybe it flew into the tree because it malfunctioned before it got to the tree. And that's a manufacturing defect, and so maybe you'll be able to help your customer get reimbursed from the manufacturer. And that will, and then maybe they'll pay you. It's better to have the manufacturer who has money than the guy with his 10-year-old kid, with a broken drone, pay for your services. But again, you're responsible for your own negligence. I take my car not to the dealer, but to Joe's tire shop, and they do the same thing, and I crash. Well, Joe's is going to be on the hook, and you need to have insurance.
So then the other situation is that you've got a lot of people who are making commercial use of drones for photography, and some of these people have the 333 exemption, some are pirates that are just completely ignoring that part of the law. Photographing houses for realtors is a big deal right now, because you can take a drone up, you can get some beautiful pictures of a house that you couldn't get through any other means. And actually one of the most effective ways that drones are being used right now, as I see, is they open up the doors, they put the drone inside the house, they fly the drone actually from inside the house out, and then they bank it up, so you get this beautiful panoramic view
of the whole
from
property.
The inside of the house to the entire property. You can even get it high enough to show if it's near a beach or something like that. Fantastic view. But as a drone operator, whether you have the commercial 333 exemption or not, what kind of things do you need to be worried about if you are using your drone to make money?
Well, you need to be aware of people accusing you of violating their privacy.
Okay, fair enough.
So the higher you get and the farther away from the house, the more likely it is that you're going to shoot into a neighbor's yard.
Correct, yes.
And as the Hatfields and McCoys will tell you, neighbors don't always get along.
Oh, yes, that's correct, yeah.
And so, you need to be aware of other people's privacy, and so to the extent that you can focus your shot only on the property you're paid to shoot, or blur out everybody else, or really narrow what you're doing there. That's going to be helpful.
Okay. The other interesting trend that I noticed is that 3 years ago or so, when drones first started coming out, the cameras were so bad that when you got more than 100 or 200 feet away from an object, you couldn't even see whether it was a male or female. You couldn't see much of anything. Now the cameras are getting better and better, and it's kind of like I've got a cell phone that takes better pictures than the camera I spent $1,200 on 5 years ago. Drones are going to go the same route, to the point where right now you get your drone, if you get a hobbyist level drone more than 400 feet above a house, you get the same view you get from Google Earth. So what is a reasonable expectation of privacy? Well, the drone cameras are getting so big that 2 years from now you're going to get a drone 400 feet above a house, and you're going to be able to look at a guy and see that his hairline's receding and exactly how many plugs he needs to make him look younger. And you're going to be able to see the dog, and you're going to be able to analyze that the dog is 7.3 years old and isn't getting enough iron in their food. So I don't know what's going to happen. A reasonable expectation of privacy, but as the cameras get better and better, certainly the privacy issue is going to become more and more acute.
It's going to be a big problem, and it's going to be an issue for law enforcement as well as the regular hobbyist.
Yeah.
And again, I think I don't see the privacy issue going away. I don't see people ever allowing drones to be flown over their house, but privacy has been eroded in this country for the last 250 years. So there's going to be that ongoing battle for sure, and as the cameras and technology gets better, and pretty soon what's going to happen is you're going to have something this big or smaller with a camera
that takes better pictures
than that one.
No, I know. Yeah.
And then they're designing drones that look like bugs and animals and
there's
birds.
There's a mosquito drone. Yeah.
And you have all these issues coming, and
this one actually has a little camera on it. It's not a very good camera, but this one makes no noise whatsoever when it flies. Pretty much, you get it 6 feet away, you're not going to hear it. This one you barely hear 40 feet away from you. But the huge quadcopters, you get notice of them, and they're 400 yards away because they make so much noise. They're basically small helicopters with 4 blades. But things are going to be getting quieter and quieter. Cameras are going to be getting better and better. So privacy is going to come more and more to the forefront.
Privacy will come to the forefront, and the smaller I think the drones are, and the better the cameras, the more risks people are going to take.
Sure. Yeah. So that what you have as a reasonable expectation of privacy is probably going to change. You're going to have to think twice about running around in your underwear in your backyard and things like that, because there may be a drone.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Interesting.
Anything else with respect to products liability that we haven't covered that you wanted to talk about?
I don't think so at this point. I think we just have to look into the future and see where drones are going to go. Obviously, as drones get smaller and smaller and get more and more reliable. I mean, if every drone returns to home like the Parrot Bebop does, then all of a sudden your liability is going to go way down. But, for example, one situation is when a drone loses signal, a lot of them will go up to a predetermined height, usually 60 feet. I set mine on 60 feet.
Okay.
But what if you're under an overpass? It's going to go up to the bottom of the overpass, crater out there, and then come flying down on the railroad tracks. So sense and avoid is obviously going to become more and more of a technology people are going to be looking at. Battery life is going to be very important. Right now, one thing I love about this drone is it gets me about 24 to 25 minutes of flight time. And so I can keep it up there a lot longer than something like that that'll give me about 3 minutes.
Right.
Batteries are going to get lighter and better as time goes on, and so the capability of a drone to fly long distances is going to be greater and greater, which certainly going back to privacy, if you can fly a drone for an hour, well, you can set up in Rancho Palos Verdes, fly out to Catalina Island, take some pictures of people on a boat and fly back on one battery. That's going to be much different the way it is right now. You pretty much have to hang around your drone. And so it's much more easy to tie the drone to the pilot. In the future, I think it's going to be much more difficult.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see with respect to the registration as these toy drones get smaller and smaller, they're going to be harder and harder to follow the registrations on them.
Well, you're going to try to get this registration on that drone? It's not going to fit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there'll be a microchip or something in it that someone can scan. Yeah. And then as I say, other safety features as we move away from these blades as new technologies emerge. You're going to see a big evolution of style, design.
Already we're moving toward enclosed propellers.
Right.
And can you grab that for me real quickly?
This
part and the red and black drone guard. So they're already coming out with rudimentary protections here where you can snap this onto your drone and it'll actually protect the propellers and anybody that you hit up against. So they're already coming out with this, and then the next phase I think is going to be circular prop guards that go around it so that you physically cannot touch the prop unless you're dumb enough to stick your finger in.
Right.
So, yeah. Right. Then you truly will deserve the Idiot of the Month award if you do that. But
that won't prevent lawsuits.
Yeah.
That's why ladders have all those warnings on them.
Yeah.
I mean, the most simple technology there is. And
don't use for climbing trees. This can hurt you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But still, people manage to get hurt.
People manage to get hurt, and you'll see lawsuits. So I think the best thing people can do is get insurance. Yeah. And let's talk briefly about what to do if you have a claim.
Please. Yeah.
So let's say that you are a commercial or even non-commercial and you become aware of an incident where somebody's injured by a drone that you sold, manufactured, distributed, or flew. So the first thing you need to do is notify your insurance agent or the company that insures you and give them all of the details and all the information about your drone, make, model, year, and the facts about the incident.
Sure.
Do not throw your drone away.
Yeah.
Do not throw away any of the evidence.
Right.
Put it in a bag if it's still operable or whatever and you plan to use it. Take pictures of it. Take video of it so you can show the condition that it was in. On the day of the incident.
Yeah.
Don't talk to anybody. Don't give any statements. You may have to talk to the
police
or fire. Cooperate with authorities, obviously. It's no different than when you get in an auto accident. The police come to a scene, they take a report.
Right.
Give a true and factual statement of what happened.
Yeah.
And then make sure that this information is provided to your insurance company. They will retain an attorney on your behalf.
Yeah.
And then don't talk to the other person's insurance company. Don't talk to the injured person's attorney until your insurance company's assigned you an attorney. Yeah. If you didn't listen to our advice and you don't have insurance, you need to seek an attorney straight away.
Right.
If you're served with a lawsuit, same thing. You have to advise your insurance company right away or hire an attorney.
Yeah.
Do not defend yourself unless you're seeking a poor result, and you don't want to be in the drone business at all anymore.
Right.
The second code is 486. The second code is 486.
Yeah, but I think, the most important thing, again, like I said, is insurance and,
Okay.
and being safe and keeping up with the latest technology. And, as
Sure.
these things emerge, it'll be probably tougher and tougher to do until everything gets regulated.
Right.
And like all sort of Wild West industries, there's
Sure.
going to be standards.
Yeah.
Manufacturing standards, design standards, and operating standards.
Operating standards, yeah.
And until
Correct.
those get ironed out,
Yeah.
be careful out there.
Yeah. And just try to figure out don't fly over nests, but don't be surprised if, as you're taking your drone down, somebody with a shotgun blows away that bird that you were trying to keep away from. That's just the way it goes.
And if you're flying your drone in a hunting area, be careful.
Yeah. There actually are incidents of drones being shot down by guns now.
I'm certain there are, and that it's going to continue until all this is ironed out. But I think, like everything, operate your drone with common sense. Don't try to impose your drone into what other people are doing.
Sure.
And generally speaking, you'll probably be okay.
All right, great. Well, Ed, thank you very much for your commentary. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I'm Eric Hanscom with Ed Burns, and thank you for watching this MCLE.